online course to coincide with his birthday week as a way to say, I guess here's something, a little present for you, and I'm doing my best to please you, to live according to the spiritual guidance that you've given me over the last 45 years. So my name is Durga Mata, and the name given to me by my spiritual teacher is really special. He gives us names when he sees a quality that our own soul came into the world to bring forward, to manifest, and also to develop. So the fact that my name is Durga Mata doesn't mean I am an Indian goddess. It means I'm aspiring to have some of the qualities that that particular goddess has. The significance of the name is power to fight for God's victory, weapons to defeat evil, and compassion to embrace the whole world. Durga is one of the greatest of the Hindu deities, and in Hinduism, the male and the female always balance each other. And the mythology behind Durga is that there was a great battle between the forces of good and evil. The gods and the demons were locked in battle, and it was so evenly balanced that they were likely to destroy the whole universe. So they decided to bring a new deity into the world, and her name was Durga. And each and every god and goddess gave her their powers. So the first quality that Durga has, she's a warrior, she rides a lion or a tiger, and she has many arms which symbolize power. And the first meaning of my name is power to fight for God's victory. The second meaning is weapons to defeat evil. And the third meaning of my name is compassion to embrace the whole world, which is possibly why it matters so much to me and why I'm so excited that my online business, my online course, has the capacity to reach all and each and every corner of the world. And I already have people signed up on the course from India, Australia, Turkey, Serbia, USA, Britain and Germany, which isn't bad for a start. Half of the cohort that I have so far on my course is from abroad. My view is the world has many problems, and we can only change them when we start with where we are. So if we want to see a world in which there is peace and harmony, we have to do all we can to work together with people from diverse backgrounds. And I'm really happy that my course looks as though it's going to be able to deliver on that particular point. So that's Durga Mata. The fact that I've been given the name Durga Mata does not mean I have these qualities. It means my soul came into the world to develop these qualities. So these are things I need to be working on. It's interesting with Durga because people often think of God as male, but in Hinduism, the woman is the power aspect. And there are some very interesting insights you get from some of the symbolism. For example, when Sri Rama was fighting the demon Ravana to recover his wife who was captive in Sri Lanka, he had to pray to Durga for victory. He could not achieve victory on his own. Only when he prayed, and he was an incarnation of God, only when he prayed to Durga did he receive the power that he needed to actually win the victory. And Durga is powerful, but she's also patient and compassionate. If somebody's doing the wrong thing, Durga's attitude tends to be, they're only children, what can you expect? There's an endless flow of compassion and patience there, an endless flow of forgiveness. Whereas with Kali, she's the aspect of the mother that says, you do it now and you get it right. There's consequences if you don't. And Kali is the ultimate in fighting evil. She is the most compassionate because she will not allow even evil to exist even for a second. And the more you look into the symbolism that you find within any religious images or ideas, the more depth. So that is the kind of qualities that my soul came into the world to develop and also to manifest. Power to fight for God's victory. Now that means I should be doing something with my life. That means something, and it means something related to God's victory. So what is God's victory? The way that I see it is we all come into the world on our own. We live in the world for a little while, and then we leave the world on our own. If you have any concept of God, if you use the language of God, you can use universe, you can use Allah, you can use the Brahman, Wahaguru. There are many, many different words, but they all relate to something that's beyond us, something that's greater than us, and the creator, the source. So if we come into the world from God and we live in the world, presumably for God, because he's not going to create us for nothing, and then we leave the world on our own, there is a good possibility that we will be accountable for what we did while we're here. Now, I found this whole issue of spirituality, religion, and faith so interesting that I trained as a religious education specialist. I grew up in the Quaker Church, very interesting branch of Christianity developed in the 1600s by a guy called George Fox. And he said, it's not all about what you read in the scriptures and what the saints said. It's about what can you say? What's your relationship with God? How does that manifest? How does that show itself in your life? And he had many, many questions, and he went up and down the country and met all the top scholars and all the top people in religion, but nobody could answer his questions. And so he took to spending time on his own. These days it would probably be called meditation, and he would take his Bible to quiet places, to solitary places, and he would read and he would ponder on the words he was reading. I think he worked as a shepherd for some time. And on one occasion, he had a revelation, he had a vision, and Jesus appeared before him and said, there is one who can answer your questions, even I, who am the key to the kingdom. And he was directed in his vision to start a new branch of Christianity, which became known as the Religious Society of Friends. But he was constantly harassed by society and the law. And on one occasion he said, when I'm in the presence of God, I shake, I tremble, I quake. And that's where the nickname Quakers came from. So I grew up within the Quakers, and it meant a lot to me. But as I got older, I went over to Northern Ireland in the 1970s, and at that time there was a lot of problems between the Catholics and the Protestants, and I was curious, why do some people hate other people who they've never met? And I didn't want to get labelled, and the Quaker Church was very small, so I started going to the different denominations, and I started to pray with the Quakers and with the Catholics, and I started to pray with the Protestants, and I began to realize that I could feel God's presence, what I call God's presence that I knew in Quaker worship. I could feel that in all the different places that I went to worship. And so I got quite excited. It's like, wow, God's real, and he really is here for everybody. He's not just in one particular little corner. And then I came back from Northern Ireland and started university at Birmingham, where I met my husband. And interestingly, before I met my husband, I was just literally picked up by the universe and placed at the feet of my spiritual teacher. I had never heard of meditation. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd never heard of a guru. I didn't know what any of this meant. It was completely alien and outside of my experience in this lifetime. When I met my spiritual teacher, I was hitchhiking to a canoe race. I was at university in Birmingham, and the one club that I joined, the one student activity that I joined was canoeing. I used to canoe quite a lot when I was living in Ireland, and I really loved it. And I took up a kayak, which was the only option in canoeing, and I was working towards my first whitewater race. Very exciting, putting a lot of time into it, enjoying it greatly. And hitchhiking on the way to Llangollen, I met a very odd guy. I got out of one ride at a junction about 6 o'clock in the morning, walked down the slip road to find the road that I wanted, and there was a young man sitting on the grass, and I thought, why is he sitting on the grass at 6 o'clock in the morning? Maybe he had an accident and he's in shock. So I went over and I said, are you all right? And he looked up and said, oh yes, I'm just meditating. Well, in those days, I had never heard of meditation, and I just thought he was a bit weird, probably a kind of hippie type, and definitely not someone I wanted to associate with. I walked down the road which I needed and stood at a suitable spot and started to hitchhike towards Llangollen for my whitewater race. And a car stopped, and lo and behold, this strange guy came running up and got in the car with me. He was going in the same direction for that particular bit of the route. And I sat as far away as I possibly could from him. I did not like or trust him in the least. I just thought he was weird. And he started nattering away, prattling away about how he was going to see his guru. And I was like, oh my God. I had no idea what a guru was. Just thought again, hippie type, very unsavory, very suspicious. I was a very simple country girl. Grew up on a farm. My parents were farming and we went to the Quaker church, and I really had very little knowledge about anything. So there was us driving along, and he's talking about going to see his guru up in Scotland, and I'm thinking he's a bit crazy and keep away from him. Suddenly I heard my own voice, and it said, I'm coming with you. And my mind, as you can imagine, went, what? But something very, very deep inside me just came up and said, it's all right, you'll see. And my mind went completely quiet for the whole of the rest of the day, and I travelled up to Glasgow, where I met my spiritual teacher, Sri Chinmoy. And as soon as I met him, I felt a huge sense of homecoming, an absolutely amazing sense of being at peace and where I needed to be. And the words, he is who I want to be, came into my mind. Now, those words don't come from anything in my Western upbringing. They don't come from anything to do with my British culture or my education. And I believe that they come from a previous life when I was a student of Sri Chinmoy's, and I have been his student ever since. That was quite a long time ago. And it has been the most important thing in my life ever since then. Not long later, in my university, I was walking down a corridor and I saw a young man standing with his back to me reading a notice board. And I stopped where I was in the corridor with my heart racing because I knew him. And one bit of my mind was saying, you don't know him. And the other one was saying, yes, yes, it's trying to put a name to him. I knew him, he was so familiar. And after a while, I didn't speak to him or do anything. I just pulled myself together and went on down the corridor going to where I had to go. But about a day or two later, and I just walked into the lounge. It was the first or second day that I'd moved into that residence hall. As far as I can remember, it was neighbours, but I'll have to look up. Does neighbours go back that far? And I said to nobody in particular, excuse me, does anybody know where there's a post box? Because I'd got a letter that I'd written home to post to my parents. And he saw me for the first time, practically fell out of the chair, grabbed me by the arm and walked briskly with me up the road to the post box, talking all the way. And part of my mind was going, he is crazy. And part of my mind was saying, oh, no, he's not. We've got to catch up. And it was a very beautiful start to us being together. We just met, and that was it. We just continued together. And even though we've had all sorts of difficult times over the years, we're still close friends. And probably we trust each other more than we would trust most people. I drive him nuts most of the time. My energy is very different from his, and he's got very Western, trying to fit in over the years. But we're still close friends, and that's how we met. And we've been together ever since. We've been married, now separated for quite a while, but we're still deeply connected inwardly and each other's good friends. The problems in our marriage came because he was trying to fit into the West and become more and more British so that he'd be not suffering so much racism, and I became more and more Indian the more that I practiced my meditation. So our cultures kind of crossed in a very interesting way, and we tended to annoy each other a lot. But living in separate homes, I always joke, I have the perfect solution for a long and happy marriage. I live in London, he lives in Birmingham. And the bottom line is we know we can trust each other. We know we're each other's friends. And my own joke is if we've got karmic connection, I want to make sure we deal with everything in this lifetime and don't carry it on more because. So that's a little bit about me. I've probably gone on far too long and pretty irrelevantly because it's nothing to do with what I'm doing now, which is the 7 steps to happiness. Now, with my husband, what I intended to say quite briefly and got sidetracked by memory lane is that he is Hindu, and through him I started to get to see not just different denominations of religion, but different religions. Then I met a Muslim girl who was working in the corner shop at the bottom of our road when we were first married, and I used to stop there on the way home from work and chat and got to know her better, and it turned out that she is very, very keen on, has a very strong love for God, very keen on prayer and meditation. So I'd call in there and she'd call somebody else to the till and take me upstairs and we'd just pray together. So my husband was Hindu, my best friend was Muslim, and I was very interested in ecumenical work, working together with the churches, interfaith work, working together with the different religions. And just the very fact that experientially I was discovering God is real and God is everybody's. And that inspired me to train as an RE teacher, religious education teacher, and I taught religious education for something like 30 years and loved every minute of it. Didn't always love the kind of mechanical side of teaching, the politics of teaching, if you like, but get me in a classroom in front of a class of kids talking about any aspect of religion, and I am just in heaven. I totally love teaching. But the problem with teaching was I practiced meditation, and in the morning I would sit down at my shrine and take a few minutes to meditate. But my mind was already flying ahead to the day in the classroom. I couldn't concentrate very well, and even if I could and I had a good meditation, it had to be very brief. Then in the evening, when I sit down to meditate, I'd just fall asleep because I was so tired. So what I used to do in the evening for my spiritual discipline is read my spiritual teacher's poems and books and make notes of things that I liked a lot. So I've got lots and lots of notebooks of his poems and little bits of diary from those days. But I had this kind of longing that I wish I could spend longer. I wish I could devote more time to my spiritual life. And when I retired, I had a kind of revelation, wow, now I can do more for my spiritual life. And I started doing silk painting because I'm an artist. I'm an art teacher as well as RE teacher. I did a 2-subject degree at Roehampton University, theology and religious studies and art. And it was a mural art course and I specialised in stained glass. Our first landlords were a Sikh family. So we were living not just next door, but sharing the garden. And they became just like family members. And we're still in touch many years later. So I had strong connections with Hinduism through my husband, with Islam through my best friend, and with Sikhism from our landlord's family. And that was part of what made me excited about the way that spiritual life is important and all the religions are worshipping and accessing the same reality that I call God within my Quaker Christianity. And that was partly what led me to become a religious education teacher, because the spiritual aspect of our lives is fundamental. It is important, and in our society, it's sadly neglected. So my online course is holistic. It's all about balance, and we explore what we need to do for the physical, for the mind and the mental, for the emotions and the psychological side, and for the spiritual side of our lives in order to reduce stress and increase happiness and raise consciousness. Well, stained glass I love because it's brilliant colours. It plays with light and it plays with colour. And while I was teaching, when I taught art, if I used to encourage people to explore different mediums, and whenever anybody worked with silk paint, I got this kind of Harry Potter moment. It's the wand that chooses the wizard. I wanted to be doing the silk painting, not teaching it. So I bought some silk paints and I started to be a closet silk artist, and that's been going for about 20 years now. And as a result, after my retirement and even before my retirement, I started to take silk painting more seriously and take my silk products to craft fairs. And I worked on Covent Garden for a while. And I just thought I'd show you one that I've just done. I do them for commission now. This is a silk scarf that somebody commissioned for a birthday. It's all ready to go. I shouldn't be undoing it, but since I thought I'd talk to you this morning, I thought, yeah, before I put it in the post, let me just show you a little bit of what I do in the way of silk painting. And it is fastened too tightly, so it's taking my time to unpack. This is one of these unpack videos, isn't it? Where you have to show what it's like to undo something. And I have a bow, but the bow needs to unknot, which is not easy to open on camera, but there you are. I have undone the knot and removed the lovely silky ribbon. There's the ribbon, and here's the box. I get the boxes from the Tiny Box Company, and I'm so happy because a few years ago they didn't have square ones in this size, and I used to have to use rectangular, which I wasn't so happy with. Now, we open the box, and what do you see? Very little, because it's tissue, and I use white tissue. There's flat tissue, and then there's crinkly tissue, and then there is a silk scarf inside. And this is also tied with a similar ribbon, the same ribbon actually, but it's double so that it's very pretty. And again, I've tied it with a knot so that I'll leave that, I can just slide it out. So here's the silk scarf, and this commission was for blue and gold. And to paint a silk scarf in blue and gold is not easy, because the magic about silk is as soon as you touch silk with liquid dye, the threads of the silk pull the dye gently in, and you have no control over where it goes, or very little. Show you how big it is. This is a particularly large size. I don't do these except for order because they're blooming expensive to make. And I would normally sell one like this for about £200 because of the time as well as the cost of the materials. These 2 days work there, and I don't work for less than £100 an hour a day. But actually my silk painting isn't totally tied to the time it takes to make. There are many other factors involved. Where was I? Silk painting. Have to breathe again. Take a deep breath in from the tummy. Use the diaphragm. Fill the whole of your lungs with oxygen. And a slow exhale. My work now is all about reducing stress, and breathing is one of the most important little skills that you can use in reducing stress. So I started painting silk, and I paint silk, as you can see, in a way which is fluid, in a way which is abstract, not in a way which is tightly controlled by lines that are painted on with gutter or with wax. I can do those type of silk painting if I get an order, but I prefer just to work with the colours. And again, like with stained glass, it's colour and light that I'm playing with. And I was able to get the yellow and the blue in this scarf without them mixing too much into green. There was little bits of green coming in because naturally, as soon as you put gold and yellow together with blue, where they mix is likely to turn to green, like here, for example. But I did the yellow first. I did it outside where it was a windy day and the dyes were drying quite quickly. I did the yellows and the golds first and let them dry completely. And then I was really careful how I put the blue on. So that was me painting silk as a form of meditation and feeling now I am able to meditate better and to spend my time much more in my meditation. Then I got inspired to actually join a business organization, which is called GTEx, and it means Growing Together Exponentially. And GTEx is started by a guy called Simone Vincenzi and his partner Ben, and it's all about businesses working together. If you think about it, when you look at the statistics, new businesses, something like 90% or even more don't survive their first 5 years. And what I was feeling was in my business, doing the silk painting, I was doing what I could, I was doing my best, but it wasn't progressing very well. I was not going to give up on it, but I couldn't be sure that it would actually become a real business and start bringing the proper income in that I was looking for. So I attended a lecture by Simone and I loved what he was doing, and I signed up to join the GTEx organization. And we have some wonderful events, regular events, where we get together for about 3 days and work on our business plans and create a signature product and learn about marketing it. And in my first one of these, I was advised to do more than just silk painting. It's really an organization which works more with coaches and people who do courses than it does just with products like silk paint, silk scarves and things like that might be. And so the person who was working with me, was one of the business partners from GTEx, he said, what can you do in the way of workshops? And how can you make them more than just being about your silk? Well, of course, being an RE teacher, we can talk about something that's philosophical. And also because I'm a spiritual aspirant, which means I'm striving for something in my spiritual life which is greater than what I have at the moment, I could make them a little bit transformational, empowering. And through that, I evolved my program, which is called the 7 Steps to Happiness. I gave workshops regularly every month. And after several years, these workshops were well-being and empowerment workshops to reduce your stress and increase your happiness. Now, whatever I do in my business is related to raising consciousness, because I'm a spiritual person and I believe that everything has consciousness and our consciousness is in our hands. It's something we need to take control of. I wanted to bring that into my workshops, and silk painting was a part of the way that we do raise consciousness. And I say that people ask me, what do you mean by raising consciousness? Well, anybody that practices meditation knows they feel their own consciousness change while they meditate. When you meditate, basically, in my analysis, the way that I explain it, is you make your mind quiet. And when the more your mind is quiet, the more you feel a focus in your heart, and the more your heart is open, the more you feel that you're receiving, if you like, from God. Our spiritual teacher says, when you pray, you are speaking and God is listening. When you meditate, you are listening and allowing God to speak to you. So meditation starts, for me, when your mind is quiet. And anybody that's tried it, it's not easy to make your mind quiet. You can't actually make your mind quiet. You have to allow your mind to be quiet. And that takes years and years of practice. And most of those practices are what most people think of as meditation. So most of the meditation practices are exercises to help your mind to calm and become more quiet. And another of the people who I really love in the world of motivation, business, inspiration, spiritual energy, is Sri Akarshana, and he used to be called Eric Ho, and he had a brilliant experience where he was working on giving motivational talks and his inspiring talks. I think he was somewhere in Bali or India, somewhere like that. And he noticed in the hotel there was an advert for yoga classes in the morning. So he thought it might be a good idea to do some stretches and get some physical energy from learning some new disciplines like yoga. So he went down in the morning and he said that it was quite a walk down to the location. It was a little cottage at the bottom of the grounds of the hotel. And when he got there, there was nobody around, and he was looking around. Where are all the people who are coming for yoga class? No sign of anyone. And he kind of peered in through the door and saw a gentleman sitting on the floor, presumably meditating. And he waited a while and nothing happened. So after a while, he just sort of put his head round the door and said, "Excuse me." And the guy said, "Yes." He said, "Do you know where I should go for the yoga class?" And the guy said, "Oh, that's here." "Yes." And he said, "Well, where's everybody else?" He said, "Oh, no, I only book people one at a time, one to one." And the gentleman said, "Well, do you want to start with doing the physical exercises, or would you like, first of all, to learn something about yoga and the background to it, the kind of philosophy behind it?" So Eric Ho thought, well, I suppose I ought to learn a little bit first before we start doing the exercises. So he said, "Oh, I'd like to learn a little bit about the theory." 3 hours later, he said, "I'm sorry, I shall have to go. I've got my event coming up." But every day after that, he spent his mornings down at the little cottage learning about yoga from this teacher. And he started to begin to practice it. And that was how he got interested and serious about yoga. Now, Eric Ho is very brilliant at putting his effort into things. Whatever he does them seriously and with a great focus. And he was soon getting very good at yoga, and he was interested in learning more. So he took a teacher who is Indian, comes from the Himalayas, and he started to go from time to time up to the Himalayas and spend a few weeks there learning more about yoga and about meditation. And last summer of 2019, while he was up there, he was given his spiritual name, Sri Akarshana. But that's another long story. To get back to the 7 steps to happiness. All these people were inspiring me, and I was beginning to take their philosophy into my workshops. For example, Sri Akarshana is breathing is everything. Start with the breath. And I was finding they were quite powerful and they were quite transformative, but it was difficult to fit in as my ideas of what to do to reduce stress and increase happiness increased. I didn't have time within the 3 hour or even 1 day workshops that I was doing based on silk painting. So at the end of last year, I evolved a 2 day workshop in my own house, and it was brilliant. It was just like, this is it. I'm now beginning to do what I want to do. And they were becoming quite transformational, and my concept of the 7 steps to happiness was so strong that I was actually writing a book on the subject. And then COVID-19 came along. And I can't do face-to-face workshops anymore. And without them, I had no business. So that's when I thought, I have to learn about doing things online. And thanks to COVID, I got a bounce back loan from the government, and I was able to invest it in a course which would teach me all about creating online courses. It's called Miracy, and the director is Danny Inney, and I'm enjoying it very much. And as a result of the Miracy course, my own first online course of the 7 steps to happiness is starting this week on Friday. And I have about 10 places left, and it is at cost price only. It's a trial course, cost price only, £49. And I can tell you now, that with the materials that I send out and the cost of the post, it only just covers the costs. And if it's going to America or India or Australia, somewhere far, which I have students signed up from those places, I'm actually not charging enough to cover the costs. But I'm really excited because the one thing I have discovered with online courses is you can take your message worldwide. So, and now I'm about 30 minutes into my talk, and I haven't even started to tell you about the 7 steps to happiness, which was the whole point of doing this talk this morning. Breathe. Take a deep breath in and slowly relax as you exhale. Sri Akarshana says it's like turning the dimmer switch down on your thoughts. I find that it's almost like turning a dimmer switch down on your stress. If you start to have a feeling that you can't remember what you were going to say, or a feeling that you're getting a little bit overwhelmed or stressed, take a few seconds out, take a deep breath in and a gentle exhale, and you turn down the level of stress. And there's actually a scientific reason for that. When we get stressed as a result of something which is threatening. Traditionally, in the ancient times, we were living very close to nature, and it's very likely that the stress might be in the form of a dangerous wild animal, for example. What we needed to do was get away fast or have a battle with it and win. So the stress response is often called the fight and flight response. And what happens is there's a little tiny bit in your brain, which is very ancient. They call it the reptile brain, and it's about the size of your thumbnail. And when you're in danger, that bit of you wakes up big time to keep you alive. And it stimulates your whole body by releasing certain hormones, which include cortisol and adrenaline, and they prepare you for urgent action, for either fighting or running away. They heighten your senses, they increase your blood heart rate, and it prepares you to deal with the emergency. There's also the freeze response, but I'm just focusing on the fight and flight at the moment. Now, if you deal with a physical danger like that, and use a lot of strength and power and energy to run away or to fight that adversary, all those chemicals, the hormones in your blood, are metabolized, they're burned up, they're used, and your body is free from them. But if you get the sort of stresses that we tend to get in our society, which have nothing to do with something we can fight or run away from, we keep getting more and more of those hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, put into our bloodstream, and we have no way to use them. And so they build up and they stay at a level where they're actually harmful for our body. And that's why stress is so dangerous, and why the epidemic of stress in our society at the moment is causing people to have many, many physical problems and even things like heart attacks and strokes, which are serious and can kill you. And another problem with stress is that if it's there for a while, if it builds up, if it stays as a sort of undercover in the background part of your life, it can create a complete sense of overwhelm where your mind simply cannot remember, because one of the things they do is they close down the intellectual part of your mind. They close down the neocortex, they close down the limbic system, which is where you store long-term memory. And you simply cannot think anymore. And I think that's where the freeze response comes from. It just literally shuts down the rest of your mind. It's not good. It's not helpful, and we need to deal with it. And that's what my 7 steps to happiness is all about. It's about how to deal with the stresses in your life and how to deal with the response to the stresses so that you can get rid of all that stuff and not become ill as a result. And one of the biggest problems that it can cause is depression. And depression is also hugely debilitating and can be fatal. So I'm working with the big things here in my workshops. They guarantee that they will reduce your stress and they will increase your happiness. And they're based on the 7 steps which have evolved through my workshops and which I will now tell you a little bit about. The first step begins with awareness. Step number 1 is all about awareness, becoming more reflective, more able to self-observe. There are lots of exercises we use for this, and one of them is using the senses. If you focus on the moment, if you focus on here and now, if you use your senses to hear what you can hear, to see what you can see, to smell what you can smell, to touch what you can touch, and even to recall what you can taste or what you've tasted recently, is quite a strong way of bringing your attention to where you are and to here and now. Because the expert on this area is Eckhart Tolle. He will tell you that if you're thinking about the future and worrying about the future, you're going to be stressed. If you're recalling something from the past and worrying about something that happened in the past, or remembering something that happened in the past, it's likely to be creating stress. But if you can stay here and now, in the moment, there's very little stress. The stress may be there, but it's something you can handle because it's just here and now. It's something you can explore. Even if it's something like pain, you can look at it and it's manageable. So first thing is breath. Second thing is use your senses to get into the here and now. Develop your awareness, your self-observation. Part of step number 1 is awareness. The next part is aspiration. But if you don't want to change, it's not going to change. You have to have the aspiration. You have to actually want to make a change in your life. So awareness, aspiration, and I call them the 3 A's. The third A is acceptance. You have to be aware of what your situation is and accept it. If you don't accept it, you have no peace, you have a lot of stress. You have to be aware of your environment and the world you're living in, and you have to accept it. If you don't accept it, there is no peace. Big example of that at the moment is the COVID situation. The COVID situation is very real and it's very scary, particularly for people like me who are over 60. But the scariness is real. It's no good hiding from it. You have to accept it. And because of that, I'm quite serious when I go out. I'll wear a mask and I don't go to crowded places. I get whatever I need by delivery. So you've got awareness, you've got aspiration, you've got acceptance. And we're still here in step number 1. The next bit is identity. Get to know yourself. The more you can get to know yourself, the better. And as you discover your own pure, unique identity, celebrate it, cherish it, and love it. So the final bit of step number 1 is self-love. And if you look in any of the scriptures, particularly the heart of Judaism and Christianity is to love God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You can't love unless you love yourself. If you don't have love inside your heart for who you are and for the Creator who has given you your life, what have you got to give to other people? So we have to work on self-love, self-compassion, identity, and the 3 A's. That's step number 1. And I'm noticing I've gone already 40 minutes into my talk, and I'm only on step number 1. So the others are going to have to be covered in a very brief way. Step number 2 is about your physical body. Relax it. Be aware of it. Be grateful for it. Not just your physical body, but your physical environment. Is it one which creates a sense of peace and happiness? Or is it one which you find really stressful? Because if it is, you're in control of very little in this world. But when you come into your house, if you come into your room, close the door, you're the boss. Sort it out. Make it peaceful. And if you can't make the whole of it peaceful, Make at least a corner of it peaceful, just a little bit, so that you have somewhere you can go where you feel peaceful and happy. Put some pictures on the walls that inspire you. Consciousness is an interesting subject. We all have it, and it changes, and it's affected by the people and the situations around us. I have photographs of my spiritual teacher all over the place, and people say, "What's this? You treat him like God. You're worshipping a man." I say, "No, I love his consciousness." If somebody's praying and meditating and they really know what they're doing and they are inwardly connecting with their own highest identity, or you can call it your own soul, or you can call it God, that consciousness is what I want. And when you look at something, you identify with it. People sell cars by putting a pretty lady there. Why? She has nothing to do with the car, but everything to do with the young man who might want to buy the car, and he will associate her beauty and her attractiveness with the product. That is how consciousness affects us. If we spend time with someone who's in a really, really depressed state, it tends to bring us down and make us feel miserable. We are identifying with their consciousness. And the easiest way to understand consciousness is how it makes you feel. If you're in a really happy consciousness, a really high consciousness, you feel high consciousness emotions, love, oneness, joy, peace, compassion. When you're in a high consciousness, you feel your existence from your heart, and you feel that you are part of other people, part of everything around you. Whatever the situation is, you feel joy. The joy has nothing to do with, oh, somebody gave me something nice, or somebody said something nice about me. It comes from within. It's like flowing out of your heart. It comes from the universe. It's like an exchange of just pure happiness. So that's high consciousness. When we're in a low consciousness, it is not like that. We feel closed, isolated, tense, fearful, worried, anxious, angry, aggressive, and competitive in a way that says, I matter and I'm going to get what I want and I don't care what I do to get it. And we tend to look at other people with suspicion and jealousy and all the emotions which divide us and separate from other people. And the consequence is we create unhappiness and we ultimately become unhappy. We may also become depressed. So this is the whole issue that I'm dealing with in my 7 Steps to Happiness. What strategies are there that can help you to be in a higher consciousness, to have more happiness and less stress? So step number 1 is identity and the 3 A's, self-love and things like that. Step number 2 is the physical world, physical body, health, what you eat, what you drink, what you exercise, all the things that make your body fit and healthy, and sleep and relaxation and the world about us and feng shui and making your house beautiful and sending out good vibes to the rest of the universe. Step number 3, we go into the mind and mindfulness. Step number 4 is where we get the creativity and we do some hands-on silk painting, not quite as adventurous as this. And that's step number 4. And step number 5, in a way, is the heart of the whole program, because it deals with trauma, it deals with loss, it deals with grief, it deals with forgiveness. And so much of our experience of life is tied up with something that is so much deeper than just our mind and our body. So we're getting into the emotional side of things. So that's step number 5. Step number 6, we look at community. And step number 7, we go from sound to silence. And we just touch the very edge of the skirts of the meditation world. So my 7 Steps to Happiness is a program which is powerful and it works really well. Everybody is able to actually experience themselves how their consciousness has changed, how it's raised, how they're less stressed, and how they are in fact more happy. Not only that, for the moment that they're in there, after having a nice long workshop with lovely people, they have strategies, practical strategies that they can apply to situations in their life. They have a philosophy which helps them to deal with the problems in their life, and they are more empowered and more resilient as they move on. Now, Danny Amy has a lovely story about stress. He was just getting his business going and just starting to feel he was making it. And he had a really intense week, which finished with a talk, a very big public talk in New York. And every step of the week was difficult, and each step he managed to do what was necessary and have a really successful result. And it culminated with him at the weekend in New York giving his great talk, and he got a standing ovation, and he was so happy. And he went back to his hotel, put his computer on, and found that there was a really serious problem in his business. And he was so fed up. He just felt, can't I even have 1 minute of time to be pleased and happy and celebrate? Why does everything just have to fall down and be horrible with no time to even breathe or appreciate the good things that I've just done and achieved? And he was so fed up about it, he went out and he had a long walk. He said, if ever you're stressed, a long walk at night in the rain through New York is quite a good way to deal with it. And when he got back to the hotel, he said he'd come to the conclusion that he was going to go through his life with stoicism and grace. And I think that's a lovely attitude. Stoicism and grace. Stresses come, troubles come, challenges come, problems come. We need to have a basketful of strategies to deal with them. We need to have a philosophy. The stoicism and grace is quite a good one, which will give us some kind of foundation for when things go wrong. And Danny joked, he said, you know what life is? It's a series of problems and challenges interspersed with crises and calamities. Now, that is not what I'm going to leave you with, but it is quite an interesting perspective. I have developed my 7 Steps to Happiness through my workshops, and it is powerful and effective. And I'm now taking my program online. And it's called the 7 Steps to Happiness, and I'm starting by offering it just to women, because stresses can come from relationships, and sometimes you just need a safe place. If you've had problems perhaps from stress in your relationship, you need a safe place where you're not going to feel under pressure with people in the group that you're working with. So there's daily content. There are assignments, but there's no pressure. It's not you have to get all these assignments done. There are problems if you don't do it in time. No, this is a gentle approach. It's a gentle course. You are unique. Your problems are unique. Your stresses are unique. And you have to find your way through a kind of smorgasbord or buffet of strategies. What works for you? And working together with the group, with the other people on the course, is just as important as the individual content that I'm putting in every day. In addition to the daily content, we have a weekly Zoom call, and we'll have breakout groups and discussions in those where we work on certain exercises and we review what we've learned from the week before. Not only that, but in the last 2 weeks, I'll start giving one-to-one interviews. I do quite a lot of coaching, and I'll be exploring what have people learned, what have people enjoyed, what have people not found useful, what have people found particularly helpful in their own situation that they're going to try to work on and maintain and keep going into the future. And all of that from October, when I do the pilot, will be £497, which is only about half what I've been told this kind of course is worth. So as I get more experience in it, by the end of next year, I'm hoping it'll be more like £997. But for October, it will be £497. However, that is the pilot. And before the pilot, I'm doing a trial of my course, which starts this Friday, 28th of August, and it's cost price only, £45, which is purely and simply to cover the cost of materials and postage. The materials include a silk paint kit, they include a course book, which is like a journal, but it's for recording the course primarily. The journaling is an aspect of it, but the main thing is just your own progress and your own experience of the course itself. It includes an A5 book, which is like a little notebook for recording success and gratitude stories. And it includes a pen, and it includes a few other small items which will be sent out. I'm already mailing them to people who signed up already as soon as you get on the course. So look out for it. I will send you the registration link if you email me, and you can either email me on dcbluelotus@gmail.com, or you can send me a message in Messenger, or you can do a comment here on Facebook. And my business is Durga Mata of London, and my website is durgamatteroflondon.com. So you can go in via my website and you'll find the link to the 7 Steps to Happiness course there. There's an online course page on my website. And my website is durgamatteroflondon.com. And just in conclusion, to say how things are going now, I've got somebody from Australia. I've got 3 people from America. I have got 1 person from Turkey. I've got 1 person from Serbia. I've got somebody from Germany. And I've got 1 person from India. So 7 of my bookings so far, reservations so far, are international, and we're spanning at least 4 continents, which is pretty good for a very first trial. I'm really excited about it, and I have to thank Miracy for that, because it's the course that I'm on with Danny that's given me connections with people who are aspiring worldwide, some of whom have jumped on. In addition to that, we've got people in Manchester, people in London, people in Birmingham, and I think more than that in UK, but they're the ones that just spring to mind. And I've already sent out the course packs for them. I've had to order some extra silk paint kits, because to start with I only ordered 9. I wasn't sure how many people would be signing up, and they are, like I say, they're what make the course a little bit expensive to offer, but they're essential. And why silk painting? Well, if you think about it, when you put paint on a piece of paper, it sticks, it stays where you put it. You're thinking about your painting when you paint with paint. You've got an idea of what you want to create, and afterwards, when you finish it, you're going to bring your mind forward to judge it. Oh, I like it, or oh, that's not very good. But when you paint with liquid dye on fabric, on silk, which is absolutely gorgeous and luxurious, just holding silk makes you smile. And to touch it with the dye, you watch the dye slowly drawn into the fibers. And it takes its time. It's not something you have control over. It's almost like a meditation. And you touch it with another color, and they flow together. And they create colors you can't even dream of. It doesn't matter what you do, the result is beautiful. And so that is why silk painting is a really important part of my 7 Steps to Happiness. We are creative. If you know anything about the story of creation that comes in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, God created human beings in his image. And that doesn't mean he looks like we do if we look in the mirror. It's nothing to do with our physical sense. It's to do with who we are inside. We are creative. There is nobody who is not creative. And creativity is such an important way of moving away from your mind and into your heart, into the moment, whether it's music, whether it's physical art like painting, whatever sort of creativity you work in. Build on that, develop that corner of your life, and cherish your own creativity, because it's very central to who you are. Now, I do believe I have been talking for about an hour, which is the first time that I've ever talked about the 7 Steps to Happiness for an hour. I wish you all a very happy day, and I will share this very first effort towards doing webinars with all the people who are in my course and anybody else who may be interested. Um, I think that's all I've got to say today. So thank you very much for joining me and have a very happy Sunday, 23rd of August today. Happy day. Bye.